All right, this is part 2 of the video. Sorry about that. I'm recording on my phone and I got a phone call during the video. So part 2, okay, so expanding, so I added some water to kind of cover up some of these cracks. Again, I didn't add a lot, just add a little bit. It's not so that it doesn't become just mud and kind of fall apart. It needs to be able to stand up on its own here. So again, I'm just, what I'm doing is I'm just working my way around this object, and I'm pressing to thin the sides of the walls here, and I'm also pressing down, thinning the base a little bit. DOS is an air dry clay, so that means you don't have to fire it like you would an actual clay that, say, you would use on a potter's wheel or for in a ceramics class. Those are generally fired in a kiln at very high temperatures and glazed and so on. This kind of clay, what you can do with this is you can paint it when it's dry. So those acrylic paints that you got for the class, you could actually paint on this and it would be fine. I wouldn't use this. This isn't something, this is more decorative, so it's not necessarily like a food grade or something that you would use to eat off of or drink out of, but as a decorative element, certainly, I mean, it could be a little vase, just a little cup to hold trinkets. You could see this kind of cracking at the top again, so I'm just adding a little bit of water in here just to see if I can kind of seal some of those cracks up. This area is giving me a little bit of problems here. Let me see if I can try to add in a little piece of clay into this maybe to stop that. Well, even with the I mean, the cracks can be desirable. A distressed look can be a desirable feature of one of these pinch pots. You can go ahead and rough up the outside with, with some wire or something abrasive. You can go in and make sort of lacerations and make the entire thing sort of cracked and have that be very intentional. If you don't want the cracks, just continue to smooth out with water. But you can see what we've got here. So from what I started with, making that little impression, and then hollowed this guy out quite a bit. So with the amount of clay that I used, which is about half of that block, this is about as far as I could go. I could get a little more out of this. There's other things you can do with these. Like you could, instead of going kind of straight up vertically, you can kind of have this kind of dip outside or curve outward. You can actually, if you made one of these, put this aside, made a second one, and then you can put that on top and connect the two, push the clay together, connect the two, put a hole in the top, and then you've got that common sort of vase shape, right, that widens and narrows. So that's something that's a little bit more advanced, but for what I'm requiring of you guys, just a very basic pinch pot like this. So I just want to see that you were able to work the clay, follow the instructions here, and this is what ceramicists do. This is what people have done all throughout history in making ceramic vessels, making containers, right? This is essentially a container. It's something that contains something, whether that's food or water or whatever it may be. And ancient cultures made these from mud on the riverbanks, essentially, and originally started by actually they got the idea from basket weaving and from birds' nests, and then they would put mud and fill those with mud. That mud would dry, and these shrink when they dry because the water evaporates, and then the nest or the basket would come off, and then you have a container with no holes in it, a container that will actually hold water. So that's a little bit of the history on where these sort of forms come from. So these have been around for years and years and years and years and years. So that's a basic pinch pot. I mean, basically this, you make one of these, put it down, take a picture of it. The other thing that you could do, you look at the base here, just adding a little bit of water to that. The base, you want that to be some kind of flat so that you can set it down and it's not going to fall around, right? So you have a couple options. You can lightly tap this onto a onto a flat surface, and that'll flatten out the base there. And the other one is you can actually put what's called a foot on this, where you kind of pinch around in a sort of circular motion. I'm just pinching a little pieces of this clay, pinching these in, right? So I'm making what this little, a foot is essentially a little stand, right, for this to stand on. All right, so you have something like this, where then there's a little foot underneath. Now, of course, this I would also want to have something flat over here that I can tap that onto, or I could use the railing back here. Just tap that lightly so it flattens the base. And then I've got a little foot on the bottom, and I've got my pinch pot on the top. So those are kind of the options to sort of finish. You could take say like a shish kebab skewer, a toothpick or something like that, and you can actually carve into this. You can carve designs, you can carve letters, whatever you want into that, and is another way to push the assignment further. So this is the bare minimum. If you want to explore further, that's great. And if you want to add another piece, if you want to embellish, if you want to paint, do any of those things, they're not required for the assignment, but I'd love to see them if you want to do that. So that's your basic pinch pot and exercise in ceramic clay.